I want to start out with a little group participation this morning and ask you a question. How many of you have ever made the statement or said, I should have seen that coming? Would you raise your hand? That's just about unanimous. I didn't know if you'd be honest with me this early in the morning or not, but it's just about unanimous. I think all of us have said it at some point, I should have seen that coming. One day we look around and all of a sudden everything makes sense. We connect the dots finally and we realize we should have been able to predict the mess that we're in. We should have seen it coming. If you hadn't said it about yourself, I would have asked if you'd said it about somebody else. Most of the time we can look to somebody else and they're going through some things, they're making some choices, and we could say, hey, they're going to get themselves in trouble, they're making some bad decisions, this is going to lead to a bad place, they need to be aware of that, and then when it kind of caves in around them, it's easy to look at them and say, you should have seen that coming. Perhaps you have seen that in your own life, you've seen it in somebody else, and you know you have to try to do something when you see it going down in somebody else's life. You can't just stand there and watch it happen. You try to say something, but something that you say isn't well received, and then all of a sudden the walls cave in on them, and it's something that was inevitable. Everybody else saw it coming, but they couldn't seem to see it. They act like they're surprised. They couldn't believe the mess they've gotten themselves into. But you're not shocked, and neither is anybody else, because everybody saw it coming. What's true is, sometimes we can see it coming in other people's lives, and they can't see it. And sometimes others can see it in our lives, but we can't see it. And that can apply to every area of life. It can apply relationally, financially, professionally. It can apply in our academics, our morals, our spiritual life, and otherwise. And sometimes we just act surprised at what's happened and how did we end up here? But if we're honest, if we just step back and lay aside all of our defenses and be honest, we would have to say we should have seen it coming. See, the truth is, most of our personal problems can be avoided. Most of our personal problems can be avoided. Would you agree with that? I think most of us would say, yeah, that's true. Well, this series is about avoiding the pain that can be avoided. I mean, the pain that can be avoided today, because there's already plenty of pain in life. Why not avoid the pain that can be avoided in the future? Why would we want to, go ahead and experience unnecessary pain? So at the center of this series, we're going to be focusing over the next 4 weeks on a principle. It's called the principle of the path. I first heard about it from Andy Stanley. Andy is a pastor and an author, and a decade or so ago, he wrote a book called The Principle of the Path, and that book is available today out at the Welcome Center. I really do believe that this book and this series has the potential to change your life no matter how young or how old you are, because it has such a profound application for all of us. And there are going to be 2 key words that I want to start out by defining this morning. It's obvious what those will be: principle and path. What is a principle? A principle is a fundamental truth that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior. That's a good wiki definition of principle. A fundamental truth that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior. A principle is not really a rule that you follow, okay? In some ways, a principle follows you. A principle is not even something that you've chosen to apply. In some ways, a principle applies itself to you. The principle's not a law or a rule that you can break, but let's just face it. There are some principles that if you don't follow them, they will break you. And principles apply to us whether we apply them or not. Principles are discovered. Principles can be explained. Principles have been around forever. You may not even be aware of them. But once you are aware of a principle, you have a decision to make. You can pay attention to the principle and it will benefit you, or you can ignore the principle and you can suffer the consequences. That's the 2 options we have. It's entirely up to you. Pay attention to the principle, experience the benefit, or reject the principle and suffer the consequences. Now, the second word that we need to define is the path. A path is the course or direction of your life. The course or direction of your life. There's a difference between a path and a solution. When you get lost, and I'll have to talk to the ladies because none of the men will ever admit that they've ever been lost. But ladies, whenever you've been lost, have you ever pulled up and asked for somebody, to say, hey, can you give me a solution? We don't ask for a solution, do we? We ask for directions. If you can't find somebody's house, you don't call up and say, hey, I can't find your house, I need a solution. You call up and say, I need some directions. Because when you're lost, you need to know where you are and you need to know how to get to where you're going. And so the reality is there's no fix or there's no solution for being lost. We get to where we need to be, where we want to be, where we should be, the same way we got to where we shouldn't be. We get there by moving in a certain direction. And in this series, you're probably going to hear some things you're not going to like, and that's okay. Because we're about telling truth here at the point, whether anybody likes it or not. We try to point you to Jesus. We try to point you to God's Word, and we challenge you to apply those truths. And you may not want to acknowledge certain things as truth, and that's okay. It's still the truth. Sometimes I'll have people say to me, well, I don't believe in this or that or whatever, and if it's what the Scripture says, I say, well, you don't have to believe in it. It's kind of like saying, I don't believe in hell. You don't have to believe in it to go there. I mean, you don't have to believe any of the things that the Bible teaches. I've chosen the Bible as the foundation for my truth, for the foundation I'm going to build my life on. And so what it says, I apply to my life. I try to live according to those standards. And you're going to choose a standard for you. But you can't pick and choose and say, well, I'm going to believe this part of the Bible, but I'm not going to believe that part of the Bible. We have to take it at its face value. And you may not want to acknowledge certain things, but you need to see the truth and apply it to your life nonetheless. We get to where we should be in our marriage, in our family, in our finances, in our relationships, the same way we get to where we shouldn't be. We got there by moving in a certain direction. And unfortunately, the reality is in life, many people are moving in the wrong direction. You may have walked in the door this morning and down deep inside, you know it. You haven't admitted it out loud to anybody, but you know that you're moving in the wrong direction. That's how we get to the wrong place. Moving in the wrong direction, if that's where you find yourself today, I'm going to challenge you to choose a new direction. And here's what's so surprising. You may be living or moving in the wrong direction, and you may sit there and say, but I'm happier than I've ever been. I want you to think about that. You know good and well, right this very minute, you are moving in the wrong direction, and yet you would sit there and say, but I'm happier than I've ever been. That can be true even though you're on a path that is taking you someplace that you never intended to go and someplace that you never desired to go. Maybe even someplace you never thought you would go. And you have no idea sometimes until it's too late. Make no mistake about it. Every one of us, this is true. The path you are on, it is leading someplace. The path you're on is leading someplace. Now, have you ever gotten lost while you're driving? Let's really be honest, men and two. Let me see your hands. You ever been lost? Again, if we're honest, I know it's getting harder to do with GPS, but I think we've all been lost at some point. Here's the truth. You have no idea the exact moment when you got lost. Isn't that right? I mean, you typically don't realize that you're lost until you've been lost for a while. I had some guys call me one time. We were pastoring a church in Illinois, and we had a group in St. Louis that had taken a group of youth and teenagers over there, and we were in east central Illinois. They'd been to St. Louis, and they were calling me from the van ride home at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and they said, hey, we're driving along, and we noticed the sun is outside the right-hand window. That's not right, is it? I said, no, I think you might be going north. And they said, that explains these signs, welcome to Springfield. I mean, they were on the wrong path. They were going in the wrong direction. You don't usually know it right away. I mean, I never realized that I was lost 50 yards after I'd gotten lost. Because even when I realized I'd turned on the wrong road, after 50 yards, I'm not lost. I know right where I am. I mean, after only going 50 yards, I know where I am. I know what to do about it. I hadn't gotten lost yet. But by the time you realize you're lost, You've usually been lost for a while. You've been going in the wrong direction for a period of time. Otherwise, it'd be like stepping across the line. I could say, oh no, I'm lost. Not lost, lost, not lost. That doesn't work, does it? That doesn't even make sense. You know, you typically don't discover your lostness until you've been lost for a little bit. And what that means is that it's possible right now, this very moment in this service, it is possible that you are lost or that you're living or moving in the wrong direction and you don't even realize it yet. You don't even know it yet. And the consequences of past decisions, they haven't settled in yet. You don't feel it yet. You don't feel the full impact yet. And when you discover it, you're going to want it fixed. You're going to want a solution. And the wise people around you will tell you in that moment, you don't need a solution. What you need is a change of direction. Because you get to where you need to be the same way you got to where you shouldn't be, and that is where you don't want to be. You begin traveling in a new direction in your life. So if you've been living or moving in the wrong direction this morning, I want to challenge you to choose a new direction. And here's the good news. And I really do believe this has the potential to help somebody if you will just stop and think about it and apply it to your life. And it's going to seem so simple, and yet it really is so stinking profound. I mean, it really is. And this is not my idea. This is an idea that came from the book that I think, man, why do we have to read this? To know it's the truth. When you change direction, things eventually change. I want you to let that sink into your mind and into your heart. When you change direction, things eventually change. Jesus actually talked about the principle of the path. That's not what he called it. You'll see what I mean, but parables were stories Jesus used to teach spiritual principles, and he had been teaching on all kinds of things one day, and he was ready to bring the message to a close, and he summed up, this is the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, if you want to read the whole thing, but right at the end of chapter 7, this is what he said in verse 24. He said, therefore, after all that he said, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, he's like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Now, folks, I want to tell you something. It is one thing to hear what Jesus says. It is an entirely different thing to do what Jesus says. I run onto people all the time who seem to act like or think, well, I know what Jesus says about this, that, and the other thing, and it doesn't matter if you know it if you don't do it. See, the big deal is in the doing. And he didn't, say putting these words into practice is going to fix all of our problems. He is inviting people to live in a new or different direction. He is pointing a way out. He is pointing a way forward. He is pointing a way ahead. And he said, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, he's like a wise man or a wise woman or a wise young person, a wise person who understands that life is connected. And we need to understand this. Life is connected. The past is connected to the present. The past is connected to the present. And what I'm doing today, right now, is connected to what I'll be doing tomorrow or out in the future sometime. What's happening now is often because of what happened in the past. And that is because life is connected. Not only is the present connected to the past, the present is a pretty good predictor of the future. And that's why your current direction is a pretty good indicator of your ultimate destination. And wise people know that. So in this parable that we're speaking about this morning, the wise man built his house on the rock. Now what you need to understand, I grew up in the construction business. I'm not an expert by any means. I had to get to do some consulting with a friend of mine over the weekend on some things I was doing at the house and things that I've got coming up. But I do know this. Building is a process. Building takes time. Building is not done overnight. And if you're going to build a house, you have to work through a specific process. You can't skip steps. You can't rush the process. You have to travel a certain path to be able to get to a certain product, a finished product. And things have to be done in order, and it takes time. I'll give you an example. You can't frame up the walls of a house until you first put in a foundation. You got to put in the foundation first. That's where you have to start. The drywallers can't come and install the drywall until you first have framed up some walls where you can hang the drywall. I think it's a really bad idea. I'll admit I'm no expert in building, but I think it's a really bad idea to put carpet in before you put the roof on. It's just my opinion, but I believe that that's a bad choice. Surely that makes sense to everybody. So in the context of this parable here, Jesus spoke about this like your life. It's about your relationships. It's about your money. It's about your work. It's about your pleasure. It has to do with anything and everything that's important to you. And the wise man is the one who listens to what Jesus says. He listens to what Jesus says. She listens to what Jesus says. And then he or she puts what they've heard into practice. That's what it means to build your house on the rock. And so when you think about building on the rock means building the hard way. It's harder than building on the sand. It represents the right way. It represents the time-consuming way. Building on the rock represents the most expensive way, but it is the way that's going to last. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it is a slow process. Building on the rock won't be easy, but you can count on this. It will be worth it. It'll be worth it now and for all eternity. Look with me at verse 25. We're in Matthew chapter 7. It tells us that the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. You see, the wise man built his house on the rock. Jesus then spoke about a foolish man, and a foolish man or a foolish woman is somebody who lives as though life is disconnected. The wise man, he gets it. Life is connected. The foolish man, life is disconnected. That's the way they live. And in Matthew 7:26, it says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. Now, why on earth would anybody do such a thing? Well, there are several reasons. I've already alluded to some. Building on the sand is easier than building on the rock. Building on the sand, it'd be cheaper probably. It'd be faster. It's certainly quicker. It's easier. The problem is that people fail to see, though, that life is connected. And so the foolish person thinks, well, anything can go wrong, but it probably won't. They're kind of hoping that it doesn't. But if it does, all you have to do, we've been around long enough to know this, all you have to do is press the reset button, right? All you have to do is reboot. If things don't work out to suit you, just reboot, unplug, count to 10, then plug it back in. Everything's going to be fine. That works with your cable. That works with your phone. That might work with your computer. Surely that's the way it works in life, right? Well, just reboot. Surely that's going to solve every problem that we have. Some people think that that's going to work with their marriage, or that's going to work with their kids, or their relationships in their family, or their job, their morality, their finances, you name it. Oh, hey, if it doesn't work out, I'll just reboot. If it doesn't work out, I'll just get remarried. If it doesn't work out, I'll just move out and find somebody else. If it doesn't work out, I'll just file bankruptcy. Just start over. It's no big deal. I'll just press reset and we'll reboot. The reset button, that'll fix it. Don't worry, it can be fixed. I have some bad news. That won't fix it. It doesn't fix it. And here's the reason why. And I'm going to give you a little theology from somebody that you've never probably taken theology from. Does anybody remember the group, the Eagles? They teach theology in their music. And I'm going to give you some of their theology that maybe you've never thought about in these terms before. But in high school, there was an Eagles song that came out. And it said, ain't it funny how your new life didn't change things? Do you remember the next line? You're still the same old girl you used to be. Think about that. Ain't it funny? I really do want to sing it, but I'm not gonna. I can hear it in my head. The music is there. Pitch may be a little off. So I'll just stick with reading it. Ain't it funny how your new life didn't change things? And then they give the reason why, the summation of the problem. You're still the same old girl you used to be. I kind of want to stop and say, does anybody want to stand up and testify? You know, I'm just going to start over. I'm just going to quit my job. I'll just get remarried. I'm going to bleach my hair. I'll change my name. We'll move to a new house. We'll move to a new town. We'll just reboot and start over. Ain't it funny how your new life didn't change things? Because you're still the same old guy or the same old girl you used to be. Here's the problem, folks. The big problem is that whenever we move on to the next season of life, thinking, hey, all I've got to do is just reboot, start over, that'll fix it, we get there and we get hit with the reality that we're bringing the primary contributor to our problems with us. We're the problem. And until we choose a new direction, nothing will ever change. I can marry this person, we can be together, it can end in divorce, it doesn't work out, press reset, start over, same issues, same problems, hit reset and do it again. And some of you have seen that happen, some of you have experienced it. We choose a new direction, things begin to change. That's when it begins to happen. Jesus goes on to tell us about the outcome when we build on the sand. This is back to verse 27 in Matthew chapter 7. He said, the rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. And different than the first house we read about, this house fell with a great crash. What a mess. And it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way. Now at this point, you have to do what you should have done in the first place. You have to tear it all down, and you have to start over, and you have to build on the right foundation. Because when the house falls down, you can't just fix it. You have to start over. And that's going to take some time because you're going to have to rebuild. And if you'd taken the time to do it right the first time, you wouldn't be spending time right now doing things you should have done in the first place. And you shouldn't, these are things you shouldn't have to do and you really don't want to do in order to make things right today, but you're going to have to do it. It would have been easier to do it the first time. Just do it right the first time. I remember when I was hanging siding, my dad had a home improvement business and construction, and there was nothing worse than to get up about halfway on the side of a house and realize that it's not level at the bottom. And now we've run the whole wall crooked. And it really starting to show on these windows, and now we've got to take it all down. We've got to start over. We've got to do it right. Been easier to do it right the first time. Because what happens in life is we get to that place when we realize we're going to have to rebuild, and there's great loss, and there's pain, and there's disappointment. And you or somebody else could look at you and your circumstances and say, hey, you know what? You should have seen that coming. You should have seen it coming. Here's the thing. Do you know why the house built on the rock didn't fall? I have a feeling that sometimes people that, maybe are in that situation, they'd look around and say, yeah, well, it didn't fall because, the wise man, he gets all the breaks. Everything goes his way. Why is the wise man always so lucky? I can't get anything to work out for me. Was it because everything always goes well for the wise man? Of course not. But I can just picture the guy who built on sand standing there crying about it. Nothing ever goes right for me. I can't ever get a break. It seems like everybody's out to get me. God must not even like me. Nothing seems to go my way. And the sad thing is, the people who says those kinds of things, they just keep building on the sand. They just keep building on the sand day in and day out, and then they wonder why when the rain comes down and the floods come up, why did the house they've been working so hard to build on the wrong foundation, why did it come crashing down? And then they say things like, well, I prayed and I asked God to fix it, and He didn't. He didn't answer my prayer. I just pray and pray and pray, and nothing seems to go my way. And these people build on the rock, they get all the breaks. They're so lucky. I just keep building on my sand and things keep falling apart, and God must not even love me. He doesn't even like me. No, that's not the problem. The problem is there's a principle at work here. The problem is that there is structure in our world. The problem is there is order in our world. There's predictability. And the house of the wise man, it did not fall for a reason. You remember the reason? It had its foundation on the rock. That's the reason it didn't fall. And, in this parable, I just want to make this clear so nobody walks out of here wondering about it. I want everybody to get this. So it's on the screen, it's on the app, it's in the worship folder. Building on the rock means doing what Jesus tells us to do. It's just that simple. It's cause and effect. It's sowing and reaping. Building on the rock means doing what Jesus tells us to do. There's another principle that's at work here. It's in verses 28 and 9. It says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds, they were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. Finally, somebody comes along and says something that makes sense. We can put this all together. It adds up. Finally, somebody comes along and gives us some practical teaching that we can hold on to. Folks, the world operates according to certain principles. There is structure. There is organization. Some things are predictable. Now, I'm not saying that everything makes sense, but there's cause and effect. And certain paths lead to certain destinations. And if we're wise enough to stand back and be honest, we can see it in our own lives. And we can see it in the lives of others. And you know it's true. And one of the biggest heartbreaks I have in the ministry is to watch people live their lives in a direction that is taking them someplace that they never intended to go, that they don't want to go, but that they're headed nonetheless. It's going to end in a bad place. And I've seen it happen again and again and again, and chances are you have too. And our hearts are broken while we watch it happen. And it can feel so helpless because there's nothing we can do about it. Because everybody gets to make their decisions for themselves. And sometimes people can't or won't or have decided not to see it. They just want to do their own thing, go their own way, and we all get to make that choice for ourselves. And you can do that. But that doesn't mean that the people who love us the most and who care about us the most, that they don't grieve over our poor decisions. And it certainly doesn't mean that our Father in heaven, who loves us unconditionally and who wants what's absolutely best for us, isn't heartbroken over those bad choices that we make. I mean, when we're driving and we get lost, we can turn around and within a few minutes, maybe a few hours, we can get back on track and we can get on the right road again and everything's okay. Maybe it's going to take a little bit, 20 or 30 minutes or an hour. Maybe we can do that, but we can fully recover. I mean, everything's going to look so much different in a fairly short amount of time. We can fix it, when we get lost. But in life, there are no quick fixes. You have just one life. I wish I could get this message through to everybody, especially young people, but you have just one life. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is not just practice. You get one chance to get it right. And this could be a defining moment here for somebody today. You can decide today that you are going to change your direction. And the result of changing your direction, it will change your life. And it could literally, ultimately impact your eternity. In your notes, the best way to predict your future is by paying attention to where you're headed in the present. What direction are you headed? I mean, spiritually, relationally, morally, professionally, which direction are you going? Are you building your life on a foundation that's going to last? See, following Jesus will eventually, maybe not initially, maybe not immediately, but eventually, it will make your life better. Following Jesus will make your life better. And following Jesus will make you better at life. Ultimately, that's the truth. It may not be in the moment, but ultimately that is true because Jesus offers us a better life in the present and he offers us eternal life in the future. And so here's the truth for all of us. Your life, our lives, my life today is headed someplace. And if you've lived your life in the right direction, which I believe means following Jesus, not only will your life end up somewhere on purpose, you will end up somewhere with a purpose. That's the principle of the path. And the bottom line today is that direction determines destination. We're going to be talking about living in the right direction over the next few weeks, and we're going to pick up there next time. I hope you'll join us and be a part of that, but I want you to think about which direction you're living today. Is the direction you're living going to end at a positive place? Is it going to end at the right place? I pray that it is. I have a feeling you know the answer to that question. And this morning, we're going to pray. In a moment, the ushers are going to come and wait on us for this morning's tithes and offerings, but we're going to pray before they do that. And if there's a chance that you would say, man, sitting here today, God's been speaking to me, and I realize life is definitely not on the path I expected. It is not on the path that is leading to the destination that I desire. Today, you can make a choice to change direction. And when you make a choice and make a decision to change direction, things ultimately, eventually will change. Or you can stay on that collision course. It is entirely up to you. But my appeal to you today is to pay attention. Pay close attention to the principle of the path, because the life you are living in a direction that is going to end someplace. Make sure it ends where you desire and where God desires. Let's pray together. Ushers, would you prepare to come? Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for these principles that can impact all of our lives. And I pray today that your Spirit is speaking to people, because I know that you can take a message like this and apply it to 100 people 100 different ways. Somebody might have walked in here this morning, they had no thought or no idea about changing anything, but today there's a realization. Something's got to be different, because I know where this is headed. I can see it coming. Or maybe I haven't been willing to see it coming. Maybe I've not been willing to admit it. Maybe I'm trying to ignore it. But others are telling me, I know where this is headed. I can see it. Give us the wisdom to look around and pay attention to the things that are being spoken to us. Give us the wisdom to know what to do about what you have said to us today. And then give us the courage and the determination to step up and do it. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.